good afternoon to all of our lovely listeners and the wonderful Angie Vaux, who I am incredibly excited to introduce this afternoon. A British entrepreneur, executive coach, advocate for gender equality in the tech industry, and an angel investor, I think, more recently. Over 20 years of experience in senior leadership roles at global tech companies at SAP, TripAdvisor and Mimecast. And I have recently come to meet you, Angie, through your wonderful communities of Women in Tech Forum and Women Leaders Forum. Now, I think I probably could go on, and if I relied on some AI to write your bio, I would be reading out for quite some time. So would you like to just introduce yourself to the listeners?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. Angie Vaux, founder and CEO of Women in Tech Forum and Women Leaders Forum. And I've been in the industry for, about 25 years now. Always makes me feel very old when I say that. And setting up my businesses was almost a happy accident. And being a woman in tech, which is heavily male dominated, I felt the calling to create a platform to support other women and to help them overcome the visible and invisible barriers that women face in the tech industry. And fast forward 6 years, we've now got over 20,000 members globally, and we work with women and men at every stage of their career to help them optimize their full potential and realize the career of their dreams.
And you have recently been named, I believe, an influential salesperson too on LinkedIn. Little accolade to sneak in there, but tell us how it started, because you had a very successful sales career prior to the membership forums.
Absolutely. I've always really been, prior to my journey into entrepreneurship, I've always enjoyed the corporate life. I feel very at home in multinational tech companies, working with global clients, and I never really had the intention to leave the corporate world. I ran my first Women in Tech Forum event in 2018, and it was initially a passion project. And what really spurred me on was I was a VP of sales for a big tech company, and I was building out a new leadership team. And first of all, I had very few applications from senior female leaders, but those that I did interview, they interviewed very differently to men, and they were highly experienced, great track record, and women typically downplayed their experiences. They downplayed the successes that they had, whereas the men I interviewed were very much bigging up their experiences, and they can take on the world, and they wanted this ginormous salary, and the women were just, okay, that's the offer, thank you, that sounds great. I just felt the need to really educate women and share some strategies so that women can break through the glass ceiling and have equal opportunities going into leadership positions and be successful. So we ran our first event. It sold out within a week of launching it, and SAP came in for that first event. And then we just continue to hold events every month. And I thought, actually, there's a real need here. Women want to come together, they want to build their own networks. Historically, the boys' club in tech was very much alive. I would argue it's still alive today. And, women missed out on the opportunities to go to the golf course for the day or out drinking late at night, whether they had families or caregiving responsibilities or not. And to create a forum for women to come together and to share the challenges that they were experiencing and know that they weren't unique to them, but also to provide strategies and best practices and introduce them to other senior role models who had succeeded in male-dominated environments. The whole thing was very rewarding. And I think back in 2018, there weren't really any other companies doing that. So I decided to give up my day job in, 2019, just before COVID hit. Whilst that was terrifying, because I had a conference planned with Facebook, I had an event with LinkedIn, and all of a sudden it's like, these can't go ahead. But for us, that was the opportunity to create an online platform, to create an online community. And so over the past 6 years, we've grown to about 20,000 members globally. And yeah, it's really rewarding. And, you've heard the saying that, if you love what you do, then you never work a day in your life. But every conversation I have every day is just so inspiring. I meet such incredible women and allies.
Wow. I think I could probably listen to you talk about those things for some time. I think particularly because you have been a woman that's come through that journey and seen what that looks like. And I think last time we spoke, actually, you mentioned how some of those things that you would bring into that space for women and share with them was, like holding your boundaries and knowing what you were prepared to do and not do within that corporate space, because you were also a mum, weren't you, when you were driving your career forward. And so you've also seen what it's like to return to the workplace and drive your own career. And so was it important to you to find other people that understood that journey?
Absolutely. Building a board of directors is absolutely critical for people at any stage of their career journey. And your personal board of directors is almost a group of independent career advisors who each bring different skills, different perspectives to help you move forward on your career. And it's that sort of unfiltered, unbiased advice to help you develop and grow. And it's really important to have a mix of both people internally within your organization and externally. Internally, every organization has politics. Every organization has its own way of working, its own operating rhythm. So to have somebody internally who can help you navigate that is really important. But also particular individuals. How do I approach a certain situation or a challenge that I'm facing? So that advice is invaluable. And it can also help you if you ever find yourself in a tricky situation. And then having an external board of advisors gives you that external industry view. It also gives you different perspectives. But I would also say build your personal advisors with people outside of your industry sector as well, and across generations. There are 5 generations of workers in the workforce today, each with different perspectives, different levels of technology adoption, different ways of working. So to be able to, particularly if you're older, like I am myself now, to have, your younger generation coming in is also great advice as much as your more senior people. And I'd recommend having at least 5 people on your board as well. And, being really conscious of what your goals and objectives are. And I mentor a lot of people, and the best prepared mentees or board members have a goal. I'd like to speak to you about X. Or I have a challenge in this area. I really would value your advice and expertise in helping me reach XYZ goal. So I think putting in the groundwork, understanding what you would like from each board member, how they can help you. And then also think about how often do you want to meet? Is it a person you want to meet once a month, once a quarter? Is it going to be virtually? Is it going to be over coffee? So having those clear rules of engagement is really important. And the other thing that people often forget is giving feedback to your board. It's, you spend a lot of time giving people advice, and then often you just don't hear what happens after that. So a simple message, a WhatsApp note, just to say, actually, thank you so much for your feedback on XYZ. This is what I implemented and these were the results I got. So I think it's really nice to give that feedback. And finally, make sure that the relationship is reciprocal. A lot of people, obviously people are on your board because they want to help you, they want to support you. But actually, it doesn't hurt by saying, what can I do for you? Is there anyone I can introduce you to? And most of the time people will say no, but at least they know that that offer is on the table for in the future.
Amazing. So we've got diverse thought, generate the rules of engagement before you start and be really clear, give feedback and a reciprocal relationship. And you've had your first board meeting for one of your businesses recently, haven't you?
So on the board for Women Leaders Forum, I made sure that I've got very senior women who understand the challenges that female leaders face. I've got people from different industry sectors, different sort of cultures and walks of life. I've also got people who are in the corporate world versus those that are on an entrepreneurial journey, and also people who mentor startups and help businesses grow and deliver value. And I've got a chief marketing officer who's now a CEO who also brings all of that customer experience, marketing, go-to-market strategy. So I was very intentional with selecting those board members. And then when you're running a board meeting, the first thing you need to understand are what are the goals for the meeting. You also need to put a lot of preparation into that board meeting. So you need to make sure that everybody is is very clear on the mission of the company, the values, the strategy, the financials. For Women Leaders Forum, what's the membership makeup? And then what's the sort of strategy and program going forward? And that preparation is really important, that it is done at least 2 weeks in advance and circulated to the board members. This gives them adequate time to prepare for the board meeting, to read the materials and come with any questions, suggestions, guidance, so that you're not just rehashing slides in a meeting, because 2 hours goes very quickly if that's what you're doing. And then also, be clear on, are you looking for strategic advice, guidance? Create enough time for discussion in the meeting and drive an outcome. So having a clear agenda, doing your preparation, making sure that each of the board members understands what their role is, what they can offer versus somebody else. And also be careful not to get too much into the operational detail. This is a strategic meeting driving the strategy and the future of the company. I also have a board contract as well, so all of the board members have a contract. They know what's expected of them up front and they agree to that for a period of time. I'm fortunate enough that outside of the board meeting, that my board members are also engaged and will offer advice and support to where I need it. But I think going into that first board meeting, it was very daunting. I never chaired a board meeting myself. And when you are surrounded by so much intellect and experience, it can be sort of quite daunting, but equally that pushes you forward to do your best work.
Wonderful, because you don't want to waste anybody's time, right? You want to have results-driven board meeting. Amazing. And so how did you pick them?
So I picked people who were extremely successful in their respective fields, that or have been board members themselves, that understand and represent the lived experiences of the community that we serve. Because at Women Leaders Forum, we have a diverse community, cross industry, different levels of C-suite experience. And I wanted people who could also input into the strategic direction of the company and also the programming, so that every member of our community gets value from every interaction they have with us. And there's no better people than to pick sort of highly successful female CEOs, great entrepreneurs, business coaches, who would also ask themselves, would I, in my position today, make the time to attend this workshop or this strategic networking event? What would I need to see for it to be successful? They also have very strong networks themselves as well. And as a board, they can also introduce you to new opportunities, to new people. But in order for them to do that, they have to have confidence in the brand and what you're offering. So I'm very fortunate to built a very strong board, I look forward to seeing how that evolves as we move into our next board meeting.
I will be asking questions, I think, afterwards. And so how's it all going? How do you support yourself best? Because you're also a qualified yoga teacher. You like to meditate. You're someone who I have seen is incredibly busy with events and ensuring that your communities get the impact that they've signed up for. So how do you support yourself, Angie?
So I think as a sort of busy professional, it's really important to create the time for yourself, no matter how busy you are, because at times when it is extremely busy, you can often neglect your personal health and well-being. And, I operate very well under stress. If things aren't stressful, things don't get done. So I need an element of stress in order to do my best work. I'm a night owl, not an early morning person, so I can work late if I need to. But if you still don't take the time for breaks, it can impact your performance and the quality of your work. So just before this podcast, I went for a quick walk around the lakes to sort of close off the tasks I was doing before so that I could come in afresh to this podcast, but also to gather my thoughts, because when I go out for a walk or a run, it gives my brain the space to process certain challenges or strategies that I'm working on. New ideas come. They don't when I do yoga, because yoga is very focused. You focus on the breath, the movement, and being in the moment. But that's really good. It has a very calming effect on my nervous system. And if I don't do yoga, I think it's quite apparent to my husband. I think you should go and do some yoga. Sort of carving out the time for your family. I've got 4 children, so carving out that one-on-one time and group time is really important, and prioritizing that. And it's important to refresh it as well. So I'm in that refreshing stage now. Is okay. Lots of moving pieces. What do I need to change? What night is going to be movie night with the children? What night are we going to play tennis? We've got brownies on a particular day. So that's really important. And I think being organized as well. I like paper-based to-do lists because it signals to my brain that I don't need to constantly remember to do something, I write it down. Another hack is, if it takes me longer to write the task down than actually to do the task, then I'll just do the task in the moment. And the other thing is creating time for focused work and deep thinking. I will sometimes need 2 to 4 hours to work on a big project or a big strategy that can't be interrupted other than for thought breaks. If you're distracted with, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, email, Slack, it takes you away from the task and the thinking. So creating that time for deep thinking work is very important for me.
I completely agree. And I think actually we've got so many modes of communication now that we can often get distracted without even meaning to. And so having that do not disturb is quite important for me too, actually. And I love the paper-based list. I'm a definite write it down, and hopefully it'll cement in my brain somehow. And the importance of what you do should not be glossed over. You have created a space, a community, you've created resources, you've created value for an enormous number of individuals that have, including myself, helped us elevate how we think about our career, how we think differently about the career. I love that you just shared that it was a personal board and then there's your business board. And I don't think we often think of it like that in our career. And so if you were coaching somebody into maybe a board position, or maybe it's the first time they've come to you, other than joining the communities, which we highly recommend, what would be kind of your 3 top tips, do you think, in terms of how to think about it from a strategic point of view?
So first of all, be clear on your objectives. What objectives do you want from your board? And really be strategic as well. These aren't operational challenges or day-to-day things. Really think about the long-term growth and strategy of your business, because they can really help propel you forward. Make sure you build a diverse board as well. You don't want lots of people who look and think like you, because you won't get that diversity of perspective which you need for the communities that you serve. And also be open to feedback as well. You want your board to challenge you. You want them to ask those difficult questions. because all of this helps you move forward. So be open to that feedback and, of course, act on it. And, if you've never run a board meeting before, it can be very daunting, but just start. I think once you start and you're in the moment, you'll get into the flow and you learn. I was very lucky that one of my board members also gave me advice on how to run a board meeting. This is how you would typically structure an agenda. These are the items that need to be included. We are going to be looking at the financials. We're going to be looking at, the sort of legal entity, compliance, all of that. So it's not just the fun stuff. There's also the compliance aspect that you'll be expected to demonstrate.
Wonderful. So we will direct the listeners to Women in Tech Forum and Women Leaders Forum. And tell us what's next, what's coming up.
Thank you. As sort of a company, we're constantly evolving to the needs of our community, but also the geopolitical environment as well. So we are in a state of change. So we're looking at people and culture initiatives. Our community is growing as well in terms of personally and professionally. So it's how do we build on the sort of foundations we've laid already so that we are relevant moving forward. So as a business owner, these are things that are sort of top of mind to make sure that we continue to grow and evolve, that suits the environment that we're in. I suppose that one of the really exciting initiatives is the Career Returners Initiative. Career returners represent a large part of the untapped workforce, both men, women, and all genders. And so to be working on bringing skilled workers back to the workplace, upskilling them, providing them the onboarding training, giving them the confidence to redo their CV, to apply, and to be successful once they're enrolled. So I think that for me, obviously working with yourself as well, Bri, is really exciting. When we think about we've got an aging population, the age of retirement is increasing, to bring economically inactive people back into the workforce is a huge opportunity from a business perspective, from a social perspective, from an economic perspective. And it will also add trillions to an economy's GDP. So I'm really excited to really be driving that initiative forward with yourselves and the rest of our coaches and roll that out on a global level. So that's
such a fantastic initiative. Yeah. And I think, to be able to do something that has that much impact is incredibly rewarding. And I'm very excited to see where it goes. Lastly, Angie, could you give us a little bit of music or a book or maybe something that sums you up and tells us a little bit of a flavour of who you are?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, I have just finished reading a book called The Women. I wouldn't say it sums me up, but it's a really interesting book set in the 1960s. During the Vietnam War, and a sort of young woman from a very well-to-do family was a nurse and wanted to serve in Vietnam. So she went to be an army nurse, and it was really interesting, because the message was there aren't any women in Vietnam. So to be thrown into this very male-dominated, obviously war environment, and her journey and her experiences, and then to come back as a veteran and not be recognised because she wasn't a man. And it took her 10 years to get that recognition that women did serve in Vietnam, and to have that recognition, I think was really powerful. And the message there is, all of us need to take collective action to drive change. It's not the responsibility of a CEO or a HR department or a DEI department or a government. Each of us can take action, and it's the small steps that we take every day that really can drive change over the long term.
Well, what a sentence to finish on. Thank you very much for your time and your insights. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for joining us, Angie.
Thank you very much for having me, Bryony. It was a pleasure chatting to you.